right. Okay, so we are continuing with photography, and I'm really excited about today's lesson. Caitlin, it kind of goes along with what you were just talking about with documentaries, that they can change you or move you to believe something. And the photos I'm going to show you today, one in particular, I'm going to be really interested in everyone's feedback on it. So today's Tuesday. Sometimes getting that great photo is just being at the right place at the right time, because we never know when that magical moment to capture a good image is going to be. And have either of you heard of the Pulitzer Prize?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's so it's like the biggest of big, like for writing and photos, journalism, and it's in journalism, it's about as big as you can get. It's huge. If you want to know more, I just put a little link there just to give you a little bit of background on it. So we're going to watch this short film about how award-winning photographers catch that moment. And again, as I say throughout our course and really through life, is just always keep your eyes and ears open, because you never know. I love, for example, when I'm like at an airport, or even when I'm in a doctor's office waiting, I always kind of listen to people, because people just fascinate me. And I love to people watch and just, listen and observe. It is really kind of interesting. So, and that's how you're going to capture a good image. So we'll start out watching this.
Capturing the moment is quite a challenge for photographers, a goal they try to accomplish even in the most terrible circumstances. Our cover story is reported by Maurice Dubois.
It's been just a week, and yet images from Las Vegas already haunt us. Photos from the deadliest mass shooting in recent American history join other familiar images of our time to remind us once again that a picture can be worth 1,000 words. These photographs from the Associated Press capture the chaos, the fear, the disbelief, the pain, those instants when time stopped. Of course, millions of us carry around cameras and snap photographs every day. But is it possible to teach someone to take a great picture?
On some level, you have to have the instincts to understand what it is you're seeing, because I don't think everybody understands what they're seeing. You either see something or you don't. Can you learn to see? Yes, you can.
Alyssa Adams has thought a lot about powerful photographs. Here, in a storage room containing fragments of her late husband's career, is a print of Eddie Adams' most famous photo, an unsettling image that won the 1969 Pulitzer Prize, of the National Police Chief of South Vietnam executing his Viet Cong prisoner.
I don't think we ever spoke about it.
Not a once.
Not once. Yeah, it's funny how you can live with somebody for 20 years and not talk about something like that, right?
As a photographer, we really have a lot of power.
But before he died in 2004, Eddie Adams and his wife did talk often about creating an opportunity for news photographers to share their stories, to learn from each other. Their workshop is now in its 30th year. At the Adams Barn in upstate New York, 100 emerging photographers are mentored by 10 veterans, many of them Pulitzer Prize winners. It's competitive. Students apply to attend the 4-day workshop, but tuition is free. What do you hope rubs off on the students today?
I hope my passion for photography rubs off on them, and if you're ready and the next big story happens, you'll be prepared for it.
Carolyn Cole's 2004 Pulitzer-winning images took readers to the bloody Civil War in Liberia,
the camera I use as a way of exploring the world and learning about the world and helping other people to learn about that. It's a way of people making connections over long distances. Look at the light now. It's more of a
Her
soft light.
student is Roman Knertzer. He's here from Russia.
Each one of us came here and we want to prove that we are good enough to be here. I'm doing my best to be as good as I can.
His workshop assignment to focus on a local farmer struggling to survive tough economic times.
Do you always wear your glasses, or would you mind trying one without your glasses? I just want to see his eyes a little more. Is that okay?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Let's start shooting some pictures and looking for moments, and let's start moving and dancing. And
Instructor John Philo is proof that you don't have to be a seasoned photographer to win a Pulitzer.
I remember seeing pictures. I don't remember taking them.
Didn't remember.
I can't remember clicking the camera.
To this day.
No, to this day.
May 4th, 1970, demonstrations against the Vietnam War on the campus of Kent State University in Ohio. Philo, a 21-year-old journalism major, saw students throwing rocks at National Guardsmen who dropped to one knee and raised their rifles. What's coming out of the rifles?
Well, I'm thinking blanks. I mean, I thought it was a scare tactic. And as I'm about to shoot the picture, this bullet goes through this metal sculpture. It's sort of in my line of sight and hits the tree right next to me. Everyone's still on the ground. And then you see this body on the street, on the asphalt, and it's like someone tipped over a bucket of blood. And I noticed this girl that ran up and knelt down beside him. And as I moved closer, she just sort of let out with a scream. And I think I shot one more frame, and then I went, and that was it. Let's do a little angle now. There we go. We're doing great.
After years with the Associated Press, newspapers, and magazines, Philo is now head of photography for CBS.
You're only as good as your last photo. So you're always looking to improve. You're just trying to constantly whip yourself into being a better photographer. And what does that mean? Maybe a better person?
Carol Guzzi says it's a photographer's task to find the truth in someone else's story.
It's not about how great a picture you make, because we have nothing to do with it. We're just the link. It's about who's in the pictures. And that small word empathy, to me, means everything.
Empathy has won her a record 4 Pulitzers. Here's her 2000 depiction of the plight of refugees fleeing Kosovo.
You're there and they're passing babies, and you don't stop taking pictures as they're still passing babies. You just continue, and then one rises a little bit above all the others you took.
Guzzi also won Pulitzers in 1986 for her work at the volcano disaster in Colombia. In 1995 for her documentation of the regime change in Haiti. And this photo is from the 2010 earthquake in Haiti.
It's about the people in the stories. Even the Pulitzers are wonderful to win, but they're not ours. They belong to the people who had the courage to open their lives to our cameras and let us tell their story and let someone else learn from it.
After spending time in the field, the student photographers show their work to the veterans, who are usually both supportive and critical. And they soon discover the workshop is less about equipment and technique and more about something deep in the soul. You cradle that thing like you're not going to let go of it.
It's an extension of me. No, I would never let go. I mean, it's my partner in flight. It's my third eye. It's an extension of my heart. It's always in reach.
If the workshop has a spiritual leader, it's John H. White, 1982 Pulitzer winner, known for images of everyday life in urban Chicago.
And it says to me, my camera, I will never let you down. I'm here for you. You believe in me. When you need speed, I got you covered.
White says folks come here as photographers, but find themselves leaving as visual messengers.
There's more to it than clicking. They click, we capture life, moments. That's why it's important to take pictures with the camera of the heart, with the soul, with the mind, with all of one's being. You're not taking the picture, life is taking it. I'm just a vehicle.
Is it timing?
No.
What is it?
It's in here, it's in here, it's in here, it's in there.
You can teach that.
Yes, I can turn the switch on within their heart and spirit, mind, soul. I believe it's my responsibility.
You end up bearing the weight of the world.
Yeah, everything stays with you. I mean, it stays with me. I think there's a toll emotionally that is taken, especially covering a lot of stories I used to cover: conflict, anguish, tragedy. It can break your heart.
All right. So, there we go. What did y'all think of that? What did you? I like what they said, that people who take photos are visual messengers. That really resonates, because you're giving a message, and again, it might make you feel something. It might give you empathy for others. It might give you understanding for others. It might change a behavior of your own. Any thoughts on what you just saw?
I thought it was very interesting, since photography can be used to like capture like raw human emotion, especially with like people's faces, because the faces tell like everything, in my opinion. Like with the girl crouching down next to that person's body, you can see it in her face that she is just like terrified, or like the haunting images of Vegas when you know that everything happened, and seeing the aftermath of it is just terrifying.
Yeah, I love what you said about faces. Faces, and your first assignment is going to be portraits, and even just a straight, a face can say so much. I remember years ago when I first moved to Lexington, I was anchoring on weekends, and so I have my Thursdays and Fridays off, and so I volunteered on Fridays at one of the God's Pantry food banks, and it was down. They've actually torn the neighborhood up to do a big road through there, but it was called the Bottoms, and it was back in the neighborhood past Rupp Arena, and it was these old, these shotgun houses, and a lot of people lived there their whole lives. And one of the women who, it's funny now that I'm thinking about, since I just turned 50. She was like 50 years old, and she, even though she lived down there, she gave back to her community, and she volunteered there. She had such a hard life, and you could just see it in her face, in her skin, her eyes. I mean, wonderful woman, but you could tell she'd lived a hard life, and just from, I don't know, I guess life had taken a toll on her, and you could just see it right down to her skin and her eyes. And it told a story just looking at her. And so that's why even a photograph, just a portrait, can say so much about people. I don't remember if I mentioned this to you all yesterday. I know I did in the PM about my wall behind me here in my house, that these are all my relatives. I don't know any of them. They were long gone before I gave, but they're formal, portraits from a studio back in the day. But that tells a story of my history, and my mom's written on the back of them who they are, so I would know. But it's interesting to look at them, because that's a piece of my history back there. So all right, in the interest of time, I really want to get your feedback on this. So I always have to ask this, because it just amazes me. So I get so flustered when I talk about this. So either of you, are you familiar with the Oklahoma City bombing? Either of you?
No.
No. Susie, did you say no as well? So I've been asked, I want someone to bring me an American history textbook, because it boggles my mind that people don't know what this is. This was the worst act of homegrown, and when I say homegrown, terrorism on U.S. soil, American killing American. When we get into documentary unit, I'll probably, because it's an important piece of our history. Woo, excuse me, that everyone needs to know about. And well, anyway, that's a whole other story. So anyway, we'll get to the image. We'll talk about this later. So April 19th, 1995, a man he rented a Ryder moving truck in front of the federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, and he parked it right in front, and then ran off, and the bomb exploded and ripped off the whole front of the building, and killed 119 people, including babies, because there was a daycare center in this building. So these are like, this is like a federal building where there are all the federal offices. So Social Security office, divisions of like the FBI, ATF, like all federal employees work here, but there was a daycare center. So this man, who his name was Charles Porter, he worked in a bank when he heard the blast. He grabbed his camera, and so again, just a regular guy, banker, and started snapping pictures. So and again, when you're something like this, you're just snapping. It's kind of like the guy at Kent State. You're just snapping, and then you go back and look, and then you find those images. So this is a little baby, Bailey Allman, who was pulled from the rubble. This guy's handing it to this firefighter, and then here's the image as he was carrying the baby. And then, so that's the image, and then this is the cropped version that, I mean, this photo went around the world, summing up the Oklahoma City bombing. So, and he ended up, so this guy was 20-something years old. He won a Pulitzer Prize, again, the biggest of big prize you can get for this photo. So, and again, everyone around the world took it. So my question to you is, I mean, you can see this baby is bloodied. So would you publish it? Just based upon the image itself, would you publish this?
I think I would, even though it is extremely graphic. It shows, like, we can't shimmy around and sugarcoat things like this because it is real. It does happen, and we need to acknowledge that so people can see what is actually going on, because we don't want to live in oblivion of
Right.
what's going on. You know, we need to see the reality of it.
Absolutely. Susie, what are your thoughts? Would you publish it? This was on the front page. It was on, I think, Time or Newsweek magazine put it on the cover of the magazine.
I think I will publish it so people will know what has been happening.
Yeah. Okay. So, go ahead. I'm sorry, hon.
Something like that.
So, does it make you
memory and the knowledge? So, what's been happening? Yeah. Because
yeah.
a lot of people doesn't know.
Correct. Correct. And you all, and this is why I always ask.
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and this is why I always ask people if they're familiar with the Oklahoma City bombing, because this is a piece of history, American history, and I think I'm kind of seeing evidence here lately of some things happening in our world that, and I think they did this in Nazi Germany. They didn't in history. They didn't want to teach World War II and the Holocaust. So I'm like, how do you like? That, yeah, it's the nastiest part of world history. But if you live in Germany, these young kids need to know this is part of your history, as awful as it is. We kind of need to know things so as to not repeat them. And I feel like I've been really curious why Americans have not, why this is not is prevalent. And I mean, it needs to be taught because, and again, when we get into documentaries, I'm going to expose you because it is a fascinating story. And I'll explain more. I have there are other reasons why I'm pretty passionate about it. So so now here's the big question. So good morning, Tyrone. Here's the big question. Would knowing that if this baby was alive in this photo or deceased, would that impact your decision to publish the photo? So if you knew, so let's go ahead and say that you knew that this baby, as he's holding her, had perished. Would that change your opinion to publish the photo?
I think it's kind of hard to say. I mean, obviously, thinking of it like personally, I wouldn't want to publish a dead child and put it on the front of a newspaper, but also it isn't completely up to me, I don't think, because just because it makes me uncomfortable does not mean that the message still shouldn't be sent across. Like, I have my own personal opinions, but just because something makes us uncomfortable does not mean it doesn't need to be shared with the world, because we have a lot of uncomfortable conversations every day. But I think that making people uncomfortable allows us to kind of think more critically and be more aware of everything that's going on around us. So I feel like when it comes to educating others on what's going on around us, there isn't really room to be uncomfortable, because everything's going to be uncomfortable at first because we're not used to it.
Oh gosh, what wonderful points. And I love what you said, just because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean, I mean, can you imagine if we watered down everything because it might make this group uncomfortable or that group? Like, we wouldn't have anything. I mean, because what makes me uncomfortable might not make you uncomfortable, and vice versa. I mean, you know, and again, you just brought up outstanding points that sometimes being uncomfortable is going to challenge us to check our own belief system, or check, you know, I mean, yeah, it would be great to live in a sugar-coated world, but I mean, that's just not reality. And again, I don't know that that's a positive thing. I do want to get quick other feedback here. Susie, what are your thoughts? If you knew that this child had passed away, would you still feel the same about publishing that photo?
I think, on my own opinions, I will post it and change the expression that the baby's alive.
Oh, now see, that gets into a whole, ooh, interesting.
Mhm.
That gets into a whole other realm of
You
of
know why?
truth.
All that is happening. It's not easy to find someone is alive or what. It's very, very difficult. Many people have died, but the little one innocent baby is alive. I probably post it and type and write, oh my gosh, the baby's alive. We thank God for that. So yeah.
Interesting. That's a whole other ooh, interesting. So see, you just threw an interesting little wrench, and we're going to hold on to that thought and talk about that later. That's very interesting, Susie. Because I want to. We're running out of time though, but we're going to hold that thought. Tyrone, real quickly, we're talking about photos. Just taking a quick look at this photo. This is from a huge event in American history called the Oklahoma City bombing. Happened in 1995. Sadly, a lot of Americans don't know about it, who weren't alive to remember it. But just looking at that image, Tyrone, does that image make you uncomfortable, or do you think that it should not have been published?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah,
it's just a baby with blood in his face. and what this would look like, but
Yeah, it was this. So a man bombed. I'll scroll back up here. Oh, well, that's another image. A man pulled a Ryder truck up to a federal building in Oklahoma City and pulled it up, and it exploded and it killed 119 people. So I will go ahead and tell you all that baby died. That baby is not alive in that photo. And I think a lot of people reacted to that because it summed up. I mean, you don't get any more. I mean, all 119 are innocent people, obviously, but you see a baby and you're like, what monster would do that? So it really kind of, that image has been sort of the image that has summed up the Oklahoma City bombing, that right down to the little baby. So I just want to call your attention to this. So this is a article, and they call it the Accidental Pulitzer Prize Photographer. And it's a really interesting read, because there's some, you kind of find it in art community, like art snobs. And, you know, some people just think, how does a novice, I've worked my whole life as a photojournalist, how does a novice do that? But it's a really interesting read. So I encourage you to read it, because to me, it's a really interesting thing. And it gets back to right place, right time, keeping those eyes and ears open. And then this was another article that I just encourage you. Well, let's see. There we go. So there's the man. That baby was only 1 year old. So at any rate, so I encourage you to, this is just another interesting article about him. And so now, because of that, he became a freelance photographer. So which that means he probably kept his day job as a banker, but he does freelance work. So I'm going to go, since we started, I'm going to go just a little bit over, because our next meeting again is going to be short. So has anyone heard of the Waco, Texas Branch Davidian standoff with the federal government? Has anyone heard of that?
No.
No, okay, I figured that. So,
nah,
no, okay. Susie?
September 11, 2001.
No. So September 11th, yes, that's obviously we've all heard of. So, so again, Waco, and we're going to watch documentaries. So I do think y'all will find this fascinating. And again, I feel strongly that people need to know about this. So prior to September 11th, 2001, the Oklahoma City bombing was the worst attack on active terrorism in America. 119 people killed. It still remains, as I said, the worst of domestic, meaning homegrown, meaning one of our own did this to Americans, okay? So Tim McVeigh was a Gulf War veteran, and he is the one responsible for pulling that Ryder truck up to the federal building. 168. I knew I was off on my numbers. And then injured nearly 700 others. So Waco happened in 93. Is it 93? Yes, 93. And this was a whole, and there are lots of documentaries on this as well. So long story short, there was this man, David Koresh. He was like a religious cult leader, and he had this big compound in rural Texas. And he had multiple wives and kids, and he was stockpiling weapons. So the federal government went in to execute a search warrant, and it went terribly wrong because the Branch Davidians got tipped off ahead of time, and it went terribly wrong and then led to a 2-month standoff between the government. And this was worldwide coverage. This man, Tim McVeigh, he was from New York, and he went down to Waco because he was as a Gulf War veteran, he was very disturbed by the federal government, how it was handled, and that why don't they just leave this guy alone? So he went down there and he just pulled his car up. There was a checkpoint in, only media and government, ATF, FBI could get past it, but there was a hilltop outside of this. And McVeigh just drove down from New York, sat on the hood of his car, and sold these bumper stickers about anti-gun control and that type of thing. So this image was taken of him at Waco, and it has been used several times in documentaries, several documentaries. It's been published in books. So this is the only image that proves McVeigh was at Waco. Okay. And it was 51-day siege. It ended in a blaze of fire. It was awful. April 19th, 1993 is when that standoff ended, killed 76 people. And then 2 years on the same date was when Oklahoma City was bombed. So that was sort of his, he was angry. So this image was taken by me. I was in college in Dallas, up the road from Waco, a couple hours. And I was writing for my school college newspaper. And so again, this Waco standoff was worldwide. There was media from around the world doing this, because just think of the story that the federal government is going to have a standoff, like outside. I mean, they were on a big compound, but imagine if they're outside your home, like, and you're having a standoff. Like it was huge news that the government would do this. And so I was just, yes, yes, it is. So a much younger, a 21-year-old me. So I went down because I was just curious. What? Yes, ma'am. Did you say something? So I was just curious. I was like, come again. I still didn't hear you.
I thought it was someone's house, not you.
Oh, it's me. It's a very, very much thinner, 106-pound younger me. But I was curious. I'm like, because we were just ripping Associated Press wire copy off to put in our school newspaper. So I'm like, on spring break, I'm like, I got to go find a story. There's got to be a story down there. So I'll tell my whole story later, but I found these 3 people, long story short, sitting on this hill outside of this checkpoint standoff. And I interviewed all 3 of them. Each of them was there for a different reason. One was passing out religious literature about Seventh-day Adventists. He was anti-government with the gun control. And then the lady in the tent next to her was worried about the kids in there. So anyway, and then I had the girl who, I didn't have a car back then, so I just had a friend who liked photography. I'm like, hey, you want to go to Waco with me and take pictures? So I had her take this picture of me interviewing him. And so I was the one, I ended up testifying in the trial. And I was who placed him, and I forgot to load that image there. I was the one who placed him at Waco. So last year, in the February, CNN flew me out to Oklahoma City to be interviewed for yet another documentary. As I said, I've been interviewed for several. So while I was there, there's this huge, it's beautiful. If you're ever in that part of the country, I feel like every single American needs to visit the Oklahoma City Memorial Museum. I spent 3 hours there, and it was not enough time. I could have spent more time, and it's interactive. It's the most amazing, amazing museum. They have actual pieces, like people's shoes, their keys, like all the remnant. It is fascinating. But it was also humbling because at the very beginning of the exhibit, they have a section with my story. And they have a little synopsis of it. They have a image of my newspaper article that appeared in my college newspaper. And then there's my image of him. And then they, as I said, they have these interactive screens throughout that you can, touch and then click on them and it'll play a video. So there was mine, and I thought this is really cool. It said, student journalist. After spending 20 years in TV, Roush is teaching multimedia at Eastside Technical Center in Lexington. I thought that was really cool that we got our school and our city on this exhibit thing. So, okay, that's actually a good place to stop. So at any rate, my point being in the whole big picture of this, I was 21 years old. I was in college. I was curious. I went down there. I snapped this photo, and again, it's been in. Well, it was. I should sit there and figure out how many times it's been. And every few years, again, just last year, CNN called. And we're like, we're doing another documentary. Can we interview and it's been, what 20 years now. And it's still news because it's a huge thing. And so people are still interested in it. And that photo is what they always use it. It's like McVeigh went to Waco. That's the photo they show because it's the only thing that puts them at Waco. So again, 21 years old, and I was just curious and snapped a photo. So let's stop that share. So, again, my bottom line to you all, always be curious, always keep your eyes open. I've said this a million times, but now that we've got our phones that have cameras, and these, I'm telling you, some of these phones take pretty good pictures now. But before, we had cell phones, I used to always say, I need to keep a camera on me because, I'd be someplace and I'd see something cool. And I'm like, ooh, I wish I had my camera to take a picture. So it's good to always have one on you because you never know when that next Pulitzer Prize photo might be staring you in the face. So, okay. I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to take our